I was pretty burnt out. I want a whole different life for myself and for my family. And I want this work-life balance that's not just about how much I'm working and how much I'm at home, but actually that when I'm working, it's aligned with what I care about and who I want to be.
A lot of my clients are experiencing that they feel like they're starting to age out, that the rules of the game are changing drastically, and their identity has to change as well.
I think out of the many things that psychedelic experiences can do, it kind of loosens up some of the neural pathways and the idea for maybe I'm not who I used to be, and maybe I get to be who I really want to be now.
Whereas when you sit down for meditation, it doesn't mean that something will happen. And actually, in my daily meditation, nothing happens. And the point of that actually is for nothing to happen, because it's just that you're rewiring your brain or training your brain to be cognizant of thoughts, sounds, sights appearing in consciousness. Today, I'm talking with somebody who brings a rare mix of depth, curiosity, and grounded presence to the work of self-inquiry. David Redish is a contemplative psychotherapist who works closely with men, especially those navigating fatherhood, identity shifts, and a transition that tends to surface in midlife. It's a conversation about awareness, identity, and the courage to ask more honest questions of yourself. And that's where we're going to begin. Welcome to the podcast. I would like to start with your own journey.
A good starting point is being a new father and that transition of becoming a father. I think that's probably one of the big catalysts in my life for changing careers from being an artist and a filmmaker to being a psychotherapist.
I think fatherhood really changed a lot for me because your children force you to evolve. Your relationship with your partner is very important, and we love our partners dearly, but it's not a relationship that is unconditional, whereas our relationship with our children is unconditional.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does create that opportunity and in a way forces the the reality, the truth of that experience. When we were pregnant with our first, this is when I had been thinking about shifting careers from filmmaking. I was pretty burnt out. I want a whole different life for myself and for my family. And I want this work-life balance that's not just about how much I'm working and how much I'm at home, but actually that when I'm working, it's aligned with what I care about and who I want to be all the time. So I'm not putting on different hats and being a different David. It's the same
Mhm.
guy being, in a different role, same values, getting to practice the things that I care about when I'm at home and when I'm gone. And that that to me made it very easy to make a very difficult change later in life.
This identity that we all hold of who we think that we are, and then realizing that who we think that we are is slowly killing us. Maybe not physically, but often physically too, right? Because it does make people sick, but definitely emotionally and psychologically. And so fatherhood forced you to make that shift. And what I also really like what you said is that it is truly there's only one David or one Stephen. So I have a lot of clients, they come to me and they want to get better at what they do at work. And what we do is we look at their values, because yes, the things that hold you back at work are the things that hold you back in life. And so you nicely articulated that was the impetus for your change. So let's transition to this identity, because that's a big part, I think, that you work on. Talk to me about this identity that people are holding on to, and how you go about in helping them identify that, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great starting point. And it's interesting coming from the contemplative psychotherapy lens, when we think about identity or even ego is sort of a fixed sense of self.
Yeah.
It's a construct, it's a belief that is
Hmm.
reified every moment that we keep, walking down a certain path that is David is this and Stephen is that, and kind of try to hold things in a fixed perspective, which is not the way the nature is. So by doing that, we're putting ourselves in a sort of constant conflict. We need certain structures of identity in place to keep ourselves safe, to survive, to thrive in certain ways. So when clients come and there's an issue maybe of becoming a new father and how this is changing somebody's whole relationship to being alive, their schedule is different, their relationships are changing, maybe they're less existent, they have no social life, they're not getting enough sleep. All the structures are starting to break down. And in most cases, they're trying to reach back for what was. I could certainly know that in my own experience, that was the case. And it's very painful because what was is it's gone. Like
Yeah.
we went down those railroad tracks and they've been destroyed, that kind of visual. So you can't go backwards. You can try and you will suffer because it's not going to happen. So at first with clients, it's like meeting them right there. And sometimes it's very clear of like, let's be real. This is the truth. We cannot go back. And in other cases, maybe I may be more gentle, depending on how difficult this transition is in that moment for someone. And then it's, okay, what is the new identity? And sort of similar to how you're working with folks, what's the identity that you're wanting to step towards? Because you have a choice. In fact, this is a great time when a big life shift happens to make a new commitment to yourself. So I think it's really exciting. And for clients, it can also be really scary because it's so unknown. It's like being a child again. But you think, I'm late 20s or mid 30s or 40s or whatever age you are, I'm supposed to have all these years of experience, which you do, but it's unrelatable in that new phase. So part of my job is looking at what skills have you developed and how can we use them to kind of move forward into the next iteration of who you are.
And this is true for every stage in life, right? So it is when we become a new parent, it is when our kids become teenagers and their relationship starts to change with us and they start to rebel against us, and those sweet little kids that used to adore you suddenly start hating you. And then once we become empty nesters, then that relationship changes again, our identity changes again. And then a big part that I work in, and you do too, right, is midlife. A lot of my clients are experiencing that they feel like they're starting to age out, that the rules of the game are changing drastically, and their identity has to change as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The work with psychedelics in my practice is so helpful in these times of transitions for many people. This,
Yeah.
in a way, it can create a real, even more harsh truth, but it also softens some of the ego's defense mechanisms to protect against the change. And it kind of loosens up some of the neural pathways and the idea for maybe I'm not who I used to be, and maybe I get to be who I really want to be now. I think out of the many things that psychedelic experiences can do, that's one of the ones I see time and time again with my clients, is that it really shines light on the potential that they're able to move towards.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When I was 18, went to Thailand, and my girlfriend at the time had this great idea that I should try magic mushrooms, and I thought this would be a fun recreational kind of thing, being on the beach and with other young people. And it turned out that it was actually quite horrifying. And I after like an hour or so, although time dissipates when you're on a psychedelic journey, I had to separate from the group, and I was just sitting by myself, and I started crying profusely. And it was the first time in my life that I looked at myself without the social constructs, as well as the story that I've been telling myself around myself. And what I mean with that is the justifications that I've made for my behaviors. And I realized that I did not like that person that I was. And after this agony of realizing who I was able to then also say to myself, but you don't have to be that. And it absolutely changed my life. That was the impetus for me to go to college and study hard and really do things in the right way, to be able to become the person that I wanted to become. The things that psychedelics can do is that you can have realizations that might seem to the outside like platitudes, but because you visually experience it,
Yeah.
it somehow is the difference. I don't know. Like you tell me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And right, it's such a personal experience that, and actually the way that you articulated, the way you explained your journey there, it was really landing for me. It reminded me of something similar. And it's so personal that it can be hard for others to listen and kind of attach and say like, oh, maybe that would be helpful for me. But there is something that happens, right? There's a somatic experience. Now, there's many layers of experience. There's the psychological, which is where most folks are going to share from because we
Uh-huh.
spend so much time in our minds. The
Uh-huh.
journey tends to focus there. But
Yeah.
there are somatic experiences. There are physiological experiences with certain medicines that are literally healing parts of us in certain cases. Those are going to be really hard for folks to explain. But like, I feel different. I am different. Like there is a shift that occurs. And then from a spiritual lens, I mean, there are many traditions and like with ayahuasca in which you might sit with ayahuasca one time and the spirit of it is sort of always with you from then
Mhm.
on out. That might mean something to different people, but there's a sort of an imprint from the depth of that level of experience that really can't compare to anything else. I mean, there's a lot of research being done on near death experiences and how they might relate to this kind of a thing. And I think something about going towards psychedelics, if folks are curious and it's the right fit for them and they've, done the research and diligence, there's something about meeting the moment with a lot of reverence and intention that I guess I want to be a proponent of that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some things that I think are important. With this, there are certain states, and please share, where it is legal. So let's first talk about the legality, and then I want to talk about some other things which I think are important. Because we're not blandly recommending for everyone to be doing psychedelics. This is something to be taken very serious. It is good to have some trepidations about it or fears around it because it is something very powerful and it shouldn't be taken lightly and definitely not just be taking for recreational purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just maybe planting the seed too for touching on a little bit of the lineage and history of these medicines, which were both used in rites of passage for community members and also as medicine.
Mhm.
So somebody's ill and there might be an application for a psychoactive plant. And I'm based in Colorado, or we passed the Proposition 122, which um, decriminalized and kind of legalized a handful of plants. Psilocybin mushrooms is one of them. Now there's more regulation around psilocybin, and that there's going to be facilities that are now opening in Colorado where you can go and have an experience with psilocybin or psilocybin mushroom, magic mushrooms. You can have personal possession of psilocybin mushrooms per se. That's legal. You can gift them to other people. Basically, you just can't sell them.
Yeah. And then there's also ton of clinical trials being done all over the country at all the major universities. So that is happening. And then it's different for ketamine, right? So ketamine has more widely therapeutic use in all different kinds of states, I believe.
Yeah. So ketamine is I believe it's a Schedule 3 substance. It's been shown to be like a breakthrough medicine for therapy. So it's legal nationwide with a prescription from a medical provider. The results are really positive for it, especially for depression, PTSD, anxiety, yeah, all kinds of trauma work. I think it can be very beneficial.
I know me growing up, I always thought, oh shit, like I don't want to do that because I could get stuck and then I would become crazy, and definitely don't want to become crazy.
Well, let's say this, the potential for overdose with psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca, San Pedro, like mescaline, it's quite low. The amount you're having to take would be, especially with something like psilocybin mushroom, it would be almost more than you could fill in your stomach, let's say. That being said, I think having an idea of the dosage that's right for the individual, for the experience that they're kind of aiming to have. And you never know. You could have a small amount of one of these substances and have a very profound experience. You could have a large amount and not much happens in some cases, especially if the ego defenses are very high. Um, and like you said before, the trepidation is important. And it is possible that you could have a very challenging experience with a psychedelic, and that could cause somebody to have sort of a psychological break, or some deep wounding, or kind of like a spiritual emergency is another way that it's spoken about. So that all comes down to preparation, intention, finding the right facilitator, or to be holding this experience in a way that is safe, the setting, your preparation, your mindset going into it. These are all really important and critical factors for how the experience itself will play out. Really seek out, just like you would of any life potentially altering experience that you would go and have, seek out the people who feel like the right fit for you to be with you on that journey.
Yeah, so what I've read was it's always set and setting, right? It's like the key to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, guided experience is probably something that is recommended, ideally with a practitioner like you who is trained in this, and then also to be able to then later on integrate that journey in an appropriate way, because the reason why we started about this conversation is about this identity shift and the story that you're telling yourself. So talk to me about how then this journey can alter or change your perspective about the story that you're telling yourself.
Yeah. I mean, integration that is the work. That is the processing the psychedelic journey, the experience, and then applying it to the life across time, day to
Hmm.
day, moment to moment, right? So I'll often tell folks when they're curious about doing psychedelics, but they haven't done them yet, and they're maybe looking at it as a panacea, as I think this is the thing that's going to really change me and fix this problem I keep having. And I always want to speak to the potential of, yeah, that's possible. Let's bring that into the fold. And very likely the case will be you're going to come out of this with more questions than answers. And let's hold on to those questions, and that those are going to be the things that we're going to work with in the integration. That's truly the work, right? Because that's where the potential for somebody's personality or life outlook or values to shift can occur, but it's a slow build usually. It's really, working at deeper levels, going beneath the surface of the day-to-day psyche and how it's perceiving the world, and
Yeah.
having somebody to hold that integration, a therapist, an integration coach, a community, a circle of people holding also can be great, because it can be blissful, traumatizing, terrifying. Being able to articulate that is such an important part of the healing and changing process.
I read something around that it can, when you're younger, trigger bipolar or schizophrenia, but these illnesses they develop before the age of 28 usually. Is that correct? And so
Yeah.
that's why, once you've hit 28, those it will not trigger that. So right? So it's not that the medicine does that to you. It is that it's already inside of you, and it will emerge, but it could just sort of speed the process of emergence. Is that the right way to say it?
Folks with potential family history of bipolar, schizophrenia, we could kind of consider that a pre-existing condition or potential
Yeah.
for. And like you
Uh-huh.
said, and it could happen from other altered state experiences, that kind of a break. But the research has shown over time that, yeah, from up until like the later 20s, the potential for someone to develop that kind of state of mind is much more likely. And after that age, the percentages go down dramatically. So I think there is a safety and from that perspective of doing these experiences later in life, and that you have a lot more to draw upon to come back to, especially when the experience is distressing or you feel like you're losing your mind, which is a common experience in many journeys, even for very experienced people. And what I'll say what I fall back on when that may happen in a big journey is I know I'm going to come back to who I am. I know I'm safe. I know I'm not going to die if I'm feeling very overwhelmed and anxious. And sometimes it's a mantra of repeating, I am well, I am safe, I am loved.
That's why a guide, can be probably very helpful in walking you through that, and not telling yourself to detach, right? Because the point is, I mean, usually whatever the anxiety is that you're facing is the one that you're supposed to be facing. A an experienced guide can help you lean into that and walk through it so that you don't freak out and that you are able to get the therapeutic experience of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's shift a little bit because I think that I want to bring in meditation as part of this because we talked quite a bit about that there are specific insights that you can get from various plant medicine because of this altered state that you puts in. I guess it 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 helps you to less filter everything through your prefrontal cortex, right?
Yeah.
That enables you to have access to more of your subconscious. How does how does meditation either compare or fit or uh, um, into psychedelics or psychedelics into meditation, and why do you need both modalities, or do you need both modalities?
Yeah, I think they fit really well together. And I suggest to most of my clients that they have some regular meditation practice, or we practice meditation in our sessions a little bit, and certainly start every journey and end every journey with a different type of meditation. And when I think about directly comparing psychedelic experience with meditative experience in my personal journey, I think about sitting in Vipassana, right? You have no technology. You are on a very strict schedule. You're staying at a meditation center, at a Dharma center. You're sitting 8 to 10 hours a day in meditation, and it's a very simple meditation. It's a breath awareness where you're tracking the inhale and exhale, and then a body scan technique that you learn eventually. And then it kind of evolves very subtly from there. This was the most challenging experience that I have had. Harder than any psychedelic. Something about the length of it, the isolation. You're with others, but you're kind of eyes down, no speaking, no interaction. You speak to maybe a meditation teacher every other day, unless you need something between, and that's it. And so you're really getting deep into your own way of experiencing life, which for me, the first 3 or 4 days was very challenging to come to terms with how I've been operating, and then there was sort of a breakthrough moment, and I was able to sort of relax into the rest of the experience. So that's one type of meditation that's very, in a way, comparable to a big psychedelic experience. Then there's visualization meditation that you can do with like an app on your phone. And I think those are incredibly helpful for calming the mind, focusing the mind on a specific visual or a sensation, which can be really helpful when you're in an altered state or in a psychedelic state. So I think having those practices can make the difficult parts potentially of a psychedelic journey more easeful. And they can also allow, I think, folks to go deeper into the psychedelic experience if they have these type of practices already on board. Not that one's better than the other. I think one may have more consistent results.
So the way I always thought about it was that Vipassana, the 10-day silent retreat, or psychedelics really can help you recognize something about yourself or your psyche that's important. It could be trauma, it could be the story that you're telling yourself, which often is related to trauma. I found that my daily meditation practice is then what rewires my brain on a consistent basis. When you're thinking about, psychedelics, yes, at a certain dose, and that depends on the person, something will happen. Whereas when you sit down for meditation, it doesn't mean that something will happen. And actually, in my daily meditation, nothing happens. And the point of that actually is for nothing to happen, because at least the lineage of meditation that I'm doing, it is really not to achieve anything. And maybe if you say achieving something is just that you're rewiring your brain or training your brain to be cognizant of thoughts, sounds, sights appearing in consciousness. It's not just actually coming into your brain, because when you're feeling something on your foot, it's actually not in your brain. Yes, theoretically it gets processed in your brain, but from a pure experiential standpoint, it's happening in my foot or happening where I'm sitting. And that really is the practice, is just to recognize that it's happening, not to shut out any emotions or any thoughts, but just recognizing, oh, I have thoughts. All right, good. thank you, and I can go back to stillness, and there's no failure in having thoughts appear, and that will rewire my brain so that I'm able then to do this outside of the meditation, right? So it's not that I'm meditating to be relaxed. You might get relaxed. I mean, actually, you do get relaxed, but if you just use it as that, as soon as you get into the real world again, you easily get triggered, and you'll tell somebody off or whatever it might be, right? So the purpose of doing it is that you're rewiring your brain so that it translates over into your life. And then when things are happening, you're recognizing that these are just thoughts and that you don't get captured by your thought. And so that's how I always thought about, psychedelics and meditation, that in essence, they're actually quite different, even though they're maybe, you know, uh, in the same realm. But, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliantly said, and I agree. If meditation has a purpose, it
Yeah.
is to become in touch with our awareness.
Yeah.
And as we do that, there's different ways to do it. We can kind of label the senses as they show up. In doing that, thoughts are also a sense perception.
Hmm.
So you're
Hmm.
using the mind, its way of thinking, the sense of thinking to say, I'm thinking about this thing. Or then we use the sense of smell, like I smell this room, it's sort of piney and fresh. This taste came to my mouth, right? And then memory often will follow. And this is where the mind kind of will be distracted by itself. We touched into something, maybe we got absorbed, we're going to let it go,
Yeah.
coming back. So I think that's what you're talking about in life too. Somebody pisses you off, the emotion, the story, the pattern of belief kicks in, and we do a thing. And maybe meditation, if we practice, gives us that little gap of noticing the hook start to
Yeah.
happen, of getting sucked into the emotional pattern and saying, oh, actually, no, I don't need to hold on to that at all. Just keep moving on my path. Same thing in a psychedelic journey, right? Something intense happens. We have a feeling in our body or a memory. Can we just let it be there and fade away, or glean the insight and keep moving on? Or do we get hooked in, stuck for a moment or for a while? That can usually create suffering. So meditation is a great tool to not get stuck.
Well, as a closing, I would like you to reflect upon, if you had the opportunity to give your, let's say, 25, 30-year-old self advice, what would that be?
Meditate more. I think to be curious and keep finding great teachers. Yeah. Found that in that time of my life, 25, 30, even early 30s, I was in this drought for mentors and teachers. It was sort of the beginning of the end of my time as a filmmaker. And I was reflecting on it recently in that I burned out because I became less curious, more
Mm,
fearful that maybe this dream wasn't coming to fruition. Maybe I wasn't going to make the kind of money I thought, or be, I don't know, famous, but just be respected, or something like this in the way I thought I would be. And I got really rigid and trying to force it into being in a very specific way. And when I did that, I missed so many doors that were wide open for me that
mm,
I just closed them because I was
mm,
being ignorant. So I think if I would go back and just say, be curious, look for great teachers. There's people out here who are saying, hey, I'm just 2 steps ahead of you, or I'm many steps ahead of you, but you want to walk on the path together. And I missed that then. And now I'm all day long trying to stay open to that in all my interactions and relationships, and just seeing where is life giving me a chance to move towards, and being joyful and excited about those opportunities. That every relationship is kind of an avenue towards potential liberation.
And and so if you had the opportunity to think of, if you're 85, would your advice be to you now?
Slow down, be even more present, especially with my kids, my family, and my friends. Even more. There's more presence here. There's more time
Mhm.
than I think, and enjoy whatever that brings.
Enjoy this incredible journey that we were allowed to have.
Great question. Thank you for it.
David, thank you so much for your time. I think we probably only scratched the surface of consciousness, and there's a lot more to talk about. But I'm grateful for you coming on and to share your wisdom and your thoughts. And I hope we'll chat soon again.
I'm happy to do it. Thanks for having me, Stephen.